is Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and today is chapters 29 and 30 of WarMage Unexpected. And it is Wednesday, and it is the 13th. I hope everybody's having a great week. We are only 2 days away from our next pizza lunch with Saranofsky. If you have not signed up to try and win a pizza this week, there's still time. The sign-up forms are in the fan groups on Facebook. If you can't find it, just email me or send me a message, and I'll make sure you get the forms so that you can enter. 5 lucky fans will win a pizza delivered to their door. And everybody can bring their lunch at 1 p.m. Central Time. The Zoom link is also in the fan groups, but again, I can make sure you get it. I hope everybody's having a good day. WarMage Undeniable is on pre-order. The next Goth Drow 3 is also on pre-order. That's a mega book, 3 books in 1. Maggie Parker, the box set, is for sale now for 99 cents. And there's another, the Witch Next Door, the box set, is now up for sale 99 cents. So there's plenty to do. Lone Valkyrie will be out before you know it. And more Lyra coming starting June 29th. So busy, busy, busy. But for now, hello Grace, thanks for doing the watch party. Hello Diane and Mitch and Nancy and all the regulars. For now, we're going to do chapters 29 and 30 of WarMage Unexpected. And the next book, because WarMage Unexpected is going to end soon, the next book we're going to do is the Daniel Codex, because that's my pick. And we will probably be doing these readings. I said I'd do it until this was over. This may not be over for a while, so, we'll do another poll at some point and figure out what book to do, but adult story time, still going. Pizza lunch will probably be going on for a while too. So here we go with chapter 29. And hopefully there are I won't even say it. Chapter 29. The dragons flew over Brighton, the light shining through their wings. Raven marveled at how small everyone looked from that height, just as they ducked through a cloud and everything disappeared. She let out a startled laugh and gripped the horn tighter. Her loose red braid flowed out behind her. Leander turned his head and looked back at her. "Are you all right?" "Never better," she shouted. "Woo-hoo!" She held her fist in the air, yelling as loud as she could, as they emerged from the clouds, soaring over the city she had known all her life. They quickly passed the familiar territory, passing over the pennants of Fowler Academy. The grounds were empty except for sheep grazing in the back field. Raven gasped and looked down as she spotted a familiar figure walking the brick pathway in front of the main buildings. "Headmaster Flynn!" she yelled, putting a hand by her mouth, making the dragon laugh as his wings gently lifted and pushed down against the wind, adjusting to the airflow. All too soon, the dense forest behind the academy was below them, and Raven watched as a flock of birds took off underneath them, flying over the treetops. "We are so high!" She leaned into the saddle, smiling broadly as Teo came up alongside. William had the reins firmly in his hands and was directing the dragon to get close enough to be heard without knocking wings together. "Where are you headed? I thought we agreed not to go too high. Isn't it wonderful?" Raven leaned back and let out another whoop as William laughed, and she gave a nudge with her heels, letting Leander go faster and take the lead again. She wasn't ready to tell him her revised plan. Perfect opportunity to finally check something out, just in case. She carefully reached into her pocket and pulled out the orb, holding it tight. The pink tint was spreading in streaks almost to the top. "I don't know what is coming, but something is getting closer." Raven scanned the ground, trying to remember the drawing of the map that hung on the wall of the kitchen. In particular, the far reaches of the kingdom where the satellite ranches were located. The Jared Mountains are to the northeast of Farley. The land started to look familiar as she pointed down to the ground. "Leander, dip down a little lower. We're looking for an abandoned satellite ranch." Without questioning her, Leander descended across the sky, flying in between the clouds. William laughed, watching them work together so easily. He's taking orders. They glided along at a lower altitude, and Raven leaned over to see if she could spot the empty ranch. She waved at nervous ranch hands who stopped in the middle of their workday to watch the skies, anxious to see dragons soaring overhead. There, that has to be it. She pointed to a small patch of land with several buildings on it. Nobody was out in the fields, and several tools were lying in the grass. Take me down there. Leander complied, dipping down and landing at the entrance to the ranch. You had to land on this side of the gate? The dragon shrugged a large, scaly shoulder. Not your property. Teo and William were not far behind and touched down lightly near them. Raven climbed off Leander and looked up at the sign hanging over the closed gate. The Smithy Cattle Ranch. This has to be it. William climbed off Teo, glancing through the gate, confused. You know someone here? No, this is that satellite ranch I heard about. You know, the one where everybody disappeared. Not that again. Wasn't that a raving homeless man who mentioned it? A veteran. It was a veteran named Peter. Before she could say anything else, Leander began shivering, his nose twitching. You okay? Raven put her hand on his neck to calm him. He grunted. I don't know. Something is wrong. We're not alone. She placed her hands on his snout and looked him in the eye. It's all right. We're not going to be here long. William watched, fascinated at how easily the dragon was letting her touch him without resistance. You're calming him down. Leander suddenly shook her hands off his snout and began pawing at the ground with his massive claws, digging deeper with each scratch. He blew small flames out his nose, causing Raven to step back. Nope, spoke too soon. William unhooked a short leash from the back of Teo's saddle and tied him to the gate of the ranch. I'm feeling a little spooked myself. He scanned in all directions while he tied off the leash. Leander pawed at the ground, his snout held high in the air, sniffing in all directions, his ears turning. He shook his head, opening his mouth, blowing out small puffs of fire. Dodging the flames, Raven grabbed Leander by the snout, staring into his eyes. Guard this place, okay? I'm counting on you to have my back. We're going to go in and check out this place for just a minute. William's eyes widened. We are? Well, I am. You can wait here if you want, but I'm going in. She turned back to the dragon. Just stay calm. Focus on the sunshine. Talk to Teo if you want. Just keep it under control for a few minutes, and we'll be right back. She licked her lips and stood at the gate, peering into the ranch. It looks like everyone dropped what they were doing and just disappeared, said William, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. I think we should just go. This is a bad idea. But Raven was already climbing the closed gate. No, I want to see what's going on in here. She dropped down on the other side of the gate. You going to come, or what? William pressed his lips together and looked over at Teo, who shrugged. As she wishes. Shaking his head, William grabbed the bars of the gate and started climbing. What the hell am I thinking? Fly low, I said. Sure, she said. Once on the other side, Raven ran toward the ranch to the house in the distance. Why are we running? William took off at a jog, keeping just a few yards behind her. Raven got to the house and ran up the steps onto the porch, pushing her way into the house. Hello? Anyone home? The place was quiet except for a hawk screeching overhead. William followed cautiously behind. This place is creeping me out. Come in here and look at this, Raven called out from the kitchen. He walked into the room and saw a kitchen table with several plates and forks dropped nearby. Moldy food was still clinging to them. A dirty wooden spoon was stuck to the counter next to an iron pot. The food had burned to ashes long ago. The place looks like they got up and left in the middle of whatever they were doing, like they ran. I have such a bad feeling about this, William shivered. Let's get out of here. Raven looked into a bedroom at an unmade bed and a book resting open on top of the sheets. She walked back outside again and stood on the front porch. Her eyes widened and she banged on the front door. William! She crouched down at the edge of the porch and ran her fingers along 3 deep scratches carved into the wood, each 3 inches long. They were jagged as though somebody slowly scratched them in. William came out and stood next to her. What could have caused that? Asked Raven, looking up at him. She stood up and looked across the ranch to see flames shooting up in the air and the sign above the gate swaying back and forth. Leander's really having trouble. We can't stay much longer. William took the few steps at a run, scanning the property for anything moving. We have to get out of here. I don't like this at all. Hang on, let's check out the barn. I want to see if any of the cattle are left. No one would have fed them in days. They hurried across the ranch as William protested. There There won't be any cattle left. If this place was dormant and the cattle were still there, elves would have made off with them by now. 0 chances you'll find cattle in there. One of the tall barn doors stood halfway ajar, and there were no sounds coming from inside. That's not a good sign. Raven picked up her pace. And yet we're still running toward it, not even walking to our demise. Raven stuck her head inside, her hand on the splintering door. A putrid stench hit her in the nostrils, making her take a step back to get a breath of fresher air. Oh, something's in there. William shrugged as he caught up to her. It was a cow barn, Raven. It's probably full of shit. That's not cow dung. Something's dead. She pulled the door open and stepped inside. And once again, we're headed toward it. I think I found the source of the smell. Raven choked out the words, swallowing hard. William followed her in and took in a sharp intake of air, pressing his fist to his mouth. Lying on the floor of the barn was a legless carcass of a cow, its eyes open and cloudy, and its throat slashed. Blood had stained the ground surrounding it and turned black, and maggots were crawling all over the remains. Dangling above the carcass was a pair of bovine legs strung up and lashed to the ceiling. William twisted his face in disgust. They were in the middle of slaughtering this one. I guess they didn't finish the job before whatever happened. What a waste of a good cow. Raven kept her distance from it, covering her nose and mouth from the smell. The elves must have waited a few days before coming in and taking the cattle. This one would have already been rotting, so they left it. I need to get out of here before I puke. William ran for the exit with Raven right behind him. The sound of flames shooting in the air jogged their attention away from the barn. I have to get him out of here, Raven said. Otherwise he's not going to trust me ever again. You're not going to hear me argue. Let's go. William took her by the elbow and they started running across the open ground. He kept his head on a swivel, still half expecting to see an unwelcome visitor. They reached the gate and Raven scrambled over, approaching Leander with her hands up, trying to calm him down. Easy. We're heading out. It's okay. It's over. We're leaving. To William's surprise, Leander listened immediately and pulled himself together, snorting and gently shaking his head. Better? Better. We need to go. I can smell death in the air. The remains of death, that's all. Whatever happened here, it's already past. Let's go. Leander leaned forward and she rubbed the back of his neck, whispering into his ear. It's okay. I'm getting the same feeling you are. We can't stick around here. The two riders mounted their dragons and took off once again. Raven let William and Teo lead the way, and they headed due east on a straight line toward the Moss Ranch. The farther they got from the Smithy Ranch, the calmer Leander became, breathing easier. They passed over the river that ran along one edge of the kingdom, and Raven waved to villagers gathering water and fishing along the banks. It's like everything is normal. She pulled the orb out of her pocket and looked at it. The pink is swirling, she muttered. They passed through clouds, the air turning cold around her, and she shivered, shoving the orb back in her pocket and instantly marveling at the small crystals falling all around her, like a magic all its own. She sat back and loosened the reins, holding onto the horn of the saddle. Enjoy the ride, Raven. You're way up high, flying a dragon. A mage is flying a dragon. The wind rushed past her ears as they ducked below the clouds and came back into the sunshine. William and Teo were banking to her left, flying lower. Raven looked down to see a handful of spiral sinkholes in close proximity to each other, away from any ranch property. She leaned forward over Leander's neck. Look down there, can we... Before she could finish, Leander was tilting the edges of his wings and lowering his head, plunging toward the ground. Raven braced her feet against the webbing of his wings and tightened her grip on the horn. He's flying in closer to help me get a better look. I didn't even have to ask him. Wild. Her belly swirled with excitement. The sinkholes were spiral with a burst of crumbled dirt around the edges. William was making a wide turn, sailing downward as Raven passed over again, pointing to the sinkholes. William leaned over to one side and took a long look. He looked back at Raven and shrugged. Sinkholes, okay, they happened. There may be caves underneath this area. You have an explanation for everything. Yeah, that's how it usually goes. When is it ever monsters? Come on, the dragons need to eat and so do we. Let's head back. Raven took one last look back and patted Leander on the neck, saying nothing more. He started flapping his long red wings, rising higher, and pointed his nose in the direction of home. Raven took in slow, steady breaths and leaned to different sides, taking in the view. Maybe William is right. Maybe I'm seeing what I want to see. Once they reached the Moss Ranch and landed in an open field, William took Teo into the barn, while Raven led Leander back toward his pen, the dragon's side, back to captivity. Raven turned around and patted him on the head, walking backward for a few steps. Hey, listen, you and I keep bonding and you won't have to be cooped up in here for much longer, okay? They both entered the pen and he stood still while she unstrapped the saddle from underneath his belly. When we were flying over those sinkholes, you dipped down to get a closer look. Why did you do that? I didn't even get the chance to ask you. Leander puffed out his chest, the corner of his mouth curling up. Ah, so much better. You didn't have to tell me. I could sense that you were interested in seeing them, so I got you a closer look. She dragged the saddle off his back and tossed it on the ground. Can you read my mind or something? He licked one of his front claws clean. I wouldn't go that far. I just felt, I don't know, a connection. Stronger than before. I knew what you wanted. You didn't have to say it. Raven bit her lip and slowly said something she had been wondering for a while. Do you ever worry about getting your wings clipped? Leander looked at her, his eyes half open, as his long forked tongue slid out, licking the edge of his paw. What's the point of worrying? I have no control over it. Raven curled her hands into fists, keeping her voice low and even. You and I have all the control in the world over it, if you can pass those tests. Then why worry? He turned round and round in a circle and lay down in the straw with his back to her, his usual signal that he was done talking. Raven looked at the spikes along his back and the scales shimmering in the light coming from the lanterns. You are the most beautiful, living, breathing beast I've ever seen. He let out a sigh and rested his head on his paws, staring at the wall. I care about the tests, if that's what you're asking. Raven felt an ache in the middle of her chest. Yeah, that's what I was asking. I swear, Leander, I'll do everything I can and then some to help you pass. Raven lifted the saddle with both hands and carried it out of the pen. She walked along the path to the barn and rested it on a wooden stand. She stood for a moment in the barn and took a few deep breaths, letting them out. It has to be enough. It has to. She wiped her face with her sleeve and picked up a bag of feed, carrying it back toward the pen. At the door, she paused and shook her head before heading inside. Too late, she realized she couldn't open the bag. Can you help a girl out? I forgot my knife. A WarMage without a weapon. The dragon shook his head as she held up the bag. He leaned down and bit the top, easily tearing the burlap. Thank you. You have a point. I even have a small dagger I can tie inside my boot. Raven dumped the entire contents into the trough attached to the edge of his pen. You earned it today. Leander trudged over to the trough, shaking the ground, and sniffed the food. Not bad. She patted him on the nose. Thanks. I'll remember this day forever. I had fun out there. Me too. I'll see you tomorrow. She lingered for a moment, watching him feed. Leander looked up at her from the trough. I don't need tucking in, small girl. Not even one story about a wombat and a turtle? Okay, I'm going. I can take a hint. You'll need to prove that one. See? Here I go. She walked out of the pen as Leander went back to munching on his feed. William intercepted her in the middle of the ranch. The afternoon was getting later. You really got along out there today. Yeah, like he was really my familiar. I felt like a rider, even if my fire throwing needs work. One is dragon riding, the other is spells. The combination is what makes a WarMage. Give yourself a little time. Raven smiled and took William's hand. I'll be back tomorrow. Is it okay if I let myself in and take Leander to the field to train? You promised to fly low and stick to the empty training field or the test course? She quickly nodded. I suppose I'm going to have to let you. Not much time left. But never forget you're training a dragon. He pulled her in for a quick hug. Nice job out there, dragon rider. That's WarMage. She punched him in the shoulder. Soon enough, 3 weeks. He smiled at her and waved, heading for the house. Raven reached the road, heading back to her ranch, and paused, looking up at the sky. It was growing darker. Soon it would be pitch black. She reached into her pocket and slipped out the orb. The pink was swirling toward the top. A chill ran up her spine. I feel like I'm being watched. Raven shoved the orb back into her pocket and tapped the pin on her tunic. She took off in a sprint toward the Albee Ranch, her fingers ready to cast a spell if magic became necessary. That's chapter 29. And hi, Kathleen. My day is going well, and I hope yours is going well too. And I'm glad you're here. I hope I see you at lunch on Friday at 1 p.m., which is about now, Central Time, for the Zoom lunch. And there's lots of pre-orders out there and books out right now. But for now, let's get on to chapter 30, because it's just getting good. The weeks passed quickly, one day fading into the next as Raven repeated the same routine. Chores, the academy, and then off to train Leander. Except on the days she had no school, and then she was off to the Moss Ranch even earlier. Some nights her grandfather found her at her desk under the window, slumped over her spell books, sound asleep. Each time he shook his head and ignored his worry as he gently lifted her and tucked her into bed. Every morning, Henry and Murphy talked endlessly on the way to school about Professor Worley. Did you know he has a few familiars? Mind blown! Or about Professor Fellows and the rumors he was once a raider who got a chance to do some good or go to prison. Total rubbish. I don't believe it. Or about Headmaster Flynn and the hundreds of stories that flew around the school about his days as a wizard rider. The enemies were always large and formidable, and in almost all of them, he almost died before coming out on top. More than once, Murphy pointed out that Darrell Smith asked about her, but Raven ignored her. Too busy thinking about the last mistake she made on a quiz or how to run the course better. She only had time to think about school or how to get Leander to go faster with fewer mistakes. Every afternoon, she ran out of her last class and across the grounds of the academy on her way to Moss Ranch without stopping to say goodbye to anyone. William would wave to her as she ran by him, busy working on a pen or leading another dragon out for training. Leander was even starting to look forward to her visits, stomping and blowing smoke if she was even 15 minutes late. Her old bruises finally faded, only to be replaced by new ones, but she was getting stronger and staying in the saddle more easily. Leander had stopped trying to throw her, but he wasn't against testing her by taking a corner at a right angle to see if her feet stayed in the stirrups. Slowly but surely, she was getting stronger, and their bond was growing. Still, doubts lingered in the back of her mind. Leander was yet to be tested among other dragons. Dawn came early, catching Raven out in the field practicing her flame control before chores. She was lighting the torches faster from farther away while balancing on a rail of the fence. Only 3 days till the trials. Just 3 days. The thought kept pinging around in her head. You've gotten a lot better, Connor Albee said, impressed by her progress. This is a hard spell to control. Still needs a little work, but I'm already seeing a lot of improvement. He climbed up a ladder to extinguish a torch, placing a metal bucket over it to snuff it out. She grabbed a nearby rake to spread out the fire and let it burn out. I've taken Leander out for flights and have mastered the fire spell from his back. Took a few times. He gave her a look of concern as he moved the ladder. You were out in the wild using spells already? With a dragon? Yeah, she replied matter-of-factly. What's the big deal? You know I'm training him. He put out the next torch. Raven, a flame from a dragon is much more unpredictable than a controlled fire like the one I built for you. Strange things can happen if you don't have mastery of a spell. What other spells have you tried? The potion communication spell. That's a hard one to do while you're in motion. I spilled it all over myself and accidentally called Murphy. All she could hear out of the mirror in her room was me yelling and the wind rushing past. Connor Albee eyed his granddaughter. If I remember correctly, you've already been taught how to light an arrow in mid-flight. Raven looked away, raking the grass. I'll take that to mean you tried it too. How'd it go? The first arrows turned to ashes, but I got there, sort of. It's not easy firing off an arrow, lighting it and hitting a moving target. Work in progress. You're a very determined young woman. Speed is not normally an asset to learning proper magic, especially on a dragon in flight. Someone could get hurt. There was nobody around for miles. I'm not stupid. She tossed the rake onto the grass. I need a familiar and I still think there's a chance it could be Leander. That means I have to be riding and working on my spells with him. I don't have much time left. Neither one of us does. There's only days left now. Connor put out the last torch and climbed down. I didn't mean to say you were stupid. I'm sorry. You're a confident young woman, but there are times when confidence can become foolhardy. Raven bristled but pressed her lips together, determined to say nothing. It didn't last long. She kept her face turned toward her work and said in an even tone, It's because of Mom and Dad, isn't it? That's why you're always warning me to slow down, be more careful. She heard her grandfather sputter and start to say something, only to stop. Finally he said, That may be true, but I'm not wrong. Accidents happen. You've never told me everything about what sent the wagon over that cliff. Not today, Raven, said her grandfather, exasperated. He immediately regretted it and patted the back of his head. I promise I'll tell you whatever you want to know, whatever I know, which won't fill in every hole, but not now, okay? Can we take a break from staring at the past just for today? Raven looked at him and saw the weariness in his eyes. Sure, we can do that, but I'm not going to forget. No, I wouldn't expect you to. Go on, finish up. You'll need to get to school soon. They worked in silence, listening to a hawk screech overhead until it was time for Raven to get ready for school. Spellcasting and chores had left her hungry, and she met Henry at the gate with a warm roll wrapped in a cloth. As they walked down the road together, steam wafted off the roll, and she tore a bite off and popped it into her mouth. Hey, 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 I'm hungry too, Henry patted his stomach. Did you bring enough to share? Don't I always? She replied with a mouthful. Take it already. She handed him the extra roll and he bit into it. I have another for Murphy. She's meeting us by the fountain. You two are becoming good friends. I could say the same. Don't worry, you're still my permanent BFF. Thanks. He stuffed the rest of the roll into his mouth, barely chewing before it was completely swallowed. Today's the day we start combat training with partners. Finally, kapow! He swung an imaginary pole through the air. I've been fighting elves since I was old enough to hold a stick. I should be fine as long as I'm not paired with Bella. I haven't forgotten that she fired an arrow at my head. You shot one back at her, in case you've forgotten. I'm a little worried, to tell you the truth. I'm a lover, not a fighter. You started out the year saying you wanted to be part of the elite fighting squad. Today's your chance to work out in their arena. Besides, I'm not sure what you said is true. What part? Any of it. Let's just say you're the best I've ever seen with a slingshot, and you've never said more than hello to Jenny. I'm a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Henry shook his head. Jenny has yet to notice me. Maybe fighting is my real strength. Dad thinks I should go into farming. It'll be okay, Henry. You and I are going to do the best we can, and like always, excuse me, marvel when it turns out somewhat okay. Rinse and repeat. Like training a dragon. It has to be okay, she thought. You always know just what to say. How's the familiar coming along? Gotten him through the time trials fast enough yet? 4 days in a row. Booyah! We flew through the rings and fried the hay, no problem. It was so badass. Henry smiled and put out his hand. Well, put her there. I'm impressed. Thanks. You know, I can feel him right here, she said, tapping her chest. It's like I know how he's feeling today without being in front of him. I know what you mean. Maxwell and I are bonded like that. Where is he? Is he waiting for you at the academy? No, I haven't gotten that far. She tore off another bite. We're still working on that. They got to the edge of the woods that lined the road toward the town. He frowned at her. If you can fly a dragon through a ring and throw fire, you've bonded. Why not try? You only have 3 days left. I want to, but if I do it too early and fail, that could be it. Headmaster Flynn has agreed to let me try, which was a victory all by itself. If I do try and Leander fails, the headmaster could say it's too dangerous to try again, and I don't have a backup familiar. I don't want one. He even gave me a special test that I can't share with anyone till the time is right, to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Way to leave a teaser. Not even a clue for your oldest friend? No, I can't take the chance. If the headmaster figures out I told someone, then it's an automatic fail. A cart full of chickens and wire cages passed them, pulled by 2 donkeys. You kids want to ride? That's right, we do. Henry took a run and landed on the back. Come on, your turn. He held out his hand and Raven took a run at it, grabbing his hand and throwing herself onto the back, landing face first into the hay, her head grazing the chicken cages. A gray and white Sussex chicken pecked at the top of her head as the wagon rolled along at a nice pace. Ow! She sat up quickly, glaring at the chicken. Maybe that's a sign that a chicken is your familiar. Or a lunch. Ooh, backup chickens. Raven knows how to use a fire spell, and you could be barbecued in no time. I am still hungry if you want to. No? Very funny. I'm not picking a chicken, and I can't bring Leander yet. It's still too dangerous. I bring him in and I don't have control over him. I could be humiliated and kicked out at best, and be the responsible for the destruction of Fowler Academy at worst. I have to be sure. How do you do that? Good question. William's taking me to the drag races held by other trainers from all over the kingdom. It's the night before the tests. If we can pass, then I know we'll pass the finals. The wagon got to the edge of town where the shops were already bustling with early morning shoppers waiting for the doors to open. The cart rolled near the town square and Raven called out, "We'll get off here," jumping off the end of the cart. Henry followed her and they walked toward the fountain. Murphy was sitting on the edge waiting for them. She lifted her head and saw them, her smile growing as she waved and got up to meet them. Raven walked by the board and did a double take. They're gone. She stopped in front of it. How much longer do you need to stare at that bulletin board? Come on, I'm sure it hasn't changed that much from the last time you looked at it. Murphy came and stood in front of the board on one side of Raven. What's gone? There's nothing here. Exactly, all the flyers are gone. What? Henry said, annoyed, checking the shadows around him. I can't be late every day. They're all gone. Raven jabbed her finger in the direction of the empty board. All the reports of missing ranch hands. They're completely gone. So what? Henry asked, shrugging. They've moved on with their lives. Maybe they all went out for a beer and finally stumbled back home. Who's missing? Murphy leaned over the pool of water in the fountain. Anyone get the potion communication spell? I tried to reach my aunt in Killeen and got a cranky wizard out of bed. Whew. If I couldn't see his face, I'd have sworn he was a screeching bird. Fitz about lost his mind. A wooden sign painted with red letters had been nailed to the top of the board. Be wary of bandits. Bandits? No, that can't be, Raven whispered, confused. It's not bandits. She looked in the direction of the bakery but saw no sign of Peter. Something's not right. I can feel it. Isn't your plate already a little full? Come on. Henry took her by the arm and led her away from the bulletin board. Murphy slipped her hand into the crook of Raven's other arm and happily talked her way to the gate. Fitz followed them at a distance, occasionally taking a break to hunt something small and furry. Oh, come on, Murphy. What is that? Fitz, excuse me. Fitz had laid a dead mouse at Henry's feet and sat back satisfied, licking his fur. Murphy beamed, patting the top of the cat's head. He must like you. He brought you a prize. Henry stepped around the dead mouse, making a face. Okay, not hungry anymore. Is that a cat special power? Cats are the best. They can amplify a spell and carry secrets from one mage to another, she said, counting them off on her fingers. Raven did her best to listen to both of them as they kept walking, even as she was lost wondering about the sign. It sounded like chatter circling around her as they made their way to the school. You're awfully quiet, Henry said, as they passed under the wrought iron of Fowler Academy. Something wrong? Yeah, I don't think it's bandits, and it seems like someone is trying to sell us on it. Henry furrowed his brow. Why? What's the big deal? This isn't bandits. I flew a dragon to that satellite ranch last night and saw it for myself. Bandits don't work like that. Murphy's mouth hung open. You flew a dragon to a what? She covered her mouth with both her hands. You have a familiar. You managed to train a dragon to be a familiar. You were going to be legendary. Keep it down, Murphy, said Henry. We need to get to class. He looked around, scowling. Raven looked in the same direction and saw Jenny standing alone by the steps. She smiled at her friend. Go on without us. We'll meet you in the arena. His mood changed, and a nervous smile spread across his face. But Raven caught the smile slipping from Murphy momentarily, and she wrinkled her forehead as her friend watched Henry wandering away. Raven tapped her on her shoulder. He's not my familiar yet, Murphy. I have to show I can consistently control him, and if I even use that word control, he turns his back on me or throws me like a beanbag at the nearest hard stationary object. Yeah, sure. Murphy was still following Henry's every move across the grounds. Hey, you have something you want to share with everyone? What? No, I'm fine. Nothing wrong. Raven smiled and slung her arm across her friend's shoulders. Not what I asked, but okay. Let's go with that. You ready for class today? Weapons class? I don't know. We have to fight each other in the arena. I'm not much of a fighter. That's what Henry said. He did? She looked back eagerly in the direction he had gone. More or less. Raven shook her head. How did I not see that before? Murphy, we'd better hurry. Professor Fellows doesn't have much of a sense of humor. No, you're right. I haven't seen him smile all semester. Have you ever been to the arena? Only at orientation, but it's a good day for it. Come on, we can get another look at where the fighting squad trains. Actually, it's where all soldiers eventually train. If you're going to be a mage like that blood spell said, you would train here too. They hurried over to the arena beyond the barns, lining up single file to wave their rune at the entrance and gain admittance. Raven waved her arm and watched her skin glow. The symbol she first saw at orientation appeared on her forearm, removing the wards around the building and allowing her to follow everyone inside. In the arena, the murmur of voices was growing with anticipation at the chance to fight each other. The arena was wide and circular, covering an acre and a half and open at the top. The ground was covered in the same fine silt as the barn and had the same kind of bleachers, but all the way around the outside. Murphy and Raven found seats together on the first row in the section between two large openings where the rest of the students had gathered. The rest of the bleachers stood empty. In the center of the arena stood Professor Fellows, already waiting with two soldiers from town, dressed in padded gear and helmets, holding long poles. Professor Fellows pulled out a pocket watch and pursed his lips, holding up his hand and with a quick flick closing the doors. A late student yanked on the door from the other side, but to no avail. Raven and Murphy's eyebrows shot up, and Raven looked around for Henry to make sure he'd gotten inside on time. He was sitting a few rows behind her, looking just as surprised. A hush fell over the arena, and Professor Fellows nodded to the two soldiers to take their places. Without a word, the two began to fight, swinging the poles at each other. The taller man swung the pole at the other's feet, but his opponent leaped just in time, avoiding the sweep and swinging the stick at the taller soldier's head, striking him on his helmet and knocking him on his side. He rolled on his shoulder, still grasping the pole, and regained his footing. The fine silk covered his entire right side, falling in a fine dirt mist. He wasted no time, twirling the pole in front of his body and tilting it right and then left, lunging and striking. The other soldier backed up step by step, blocking each blow, but having no time to counter. Professor Fellows took a step back, watching the duel without expression. Raven and Murphy were on the edge of their seats, and some of the students were already standing, barely holding back from cheering. The soldier stopped moving backward and saw his moment, swinging the stick at a sharp angle and catching the taller man in the ribs, knocking him flat. He moved in and held the tip of the pole against the man's throat, his foot on his chest. The soldier on the ground growled, but didn't attempt to move. The fight was over. Professor Fellows stepped forward as the remaining students rose to their feet and cheers went up. He nodded to the soldier still standing, and the man backed off, holding his pole against him. He offered his hand to the soldier on the ground, and the man took it begrudgingly, getting to his feet as a curtain of silk poured off his back. The two men took their places next to the professor and stood there silently. The professor held up his hands, the same icy expression on his face, and waited for the arena to grow quiet again and everyone to take their seat. Thank you to our two volunteers, Privates Fernby and Lane. Well done, gentlemen. A worthy display of how to use bow staffs in combat. Thank you. You two can go report back to your regiments. The two men gave small nods and took off at a trot for the doors, but the professor flicked his hand, unlocking the main doors. A few students slipped in the door past the departing soldiers, just before the professor flicked his hand again, locking the doors again. The professor held up a parchment and let go, letting it float in midair. You've been practicing how to use the bow staff, and it's time you tried in a controlled battle. Find your name and next to it your partner's name. Get a bow stick and put on your helmets and padding, and we will begin. 4 teams spread out at the same time. Be quick about it. The students poured off the bleachers toward the parchment, elbowing each other to get a look. Ooh, look, Jenny, you're fighting Ann Lunt, said Murphy. Jenny looked over at the short, stocky girl who could normally be found on one side of Bella. Jenny swallowed hard and shrugged, heading off to find padding and a helmet. Murphy ran her finger down till she found her own name. Figures. I'm fighting Tweedledee, she whispered to Raven. She's already getting her helmet. She hitched her thumb in the direction of the pile of helmets. Nina Quint was struggling to pull a helmet on over her stocking cap. Who did you get? They both turned back to the parchment to look together. The crowd was thinning out by then, and only a few were left still trying to make out names. No! Raven and Bella said it together and looked up, glaring at each other. Bella let out an exasperated sigh. Of course I got you. This is my fate for the next 4 years, isn't it? She trudged off to get her padding. What if she's right? Raven shook her head. I wonder if the teachers know. Know what? Both Bella and my mother were war mages. They knew how to fight with magic and weapons. They protected the city. Whoa, suddenly fighting Nina doesn't seem so bad. A few rules, people. Professor Fellows' voice rang out inside the arena. Today we stop playing games and learn how to defend ourselves without magic and to attack using weapons we've had for thousands of years. But this means I am entrusting you first years to behave like young adults. He's still hot, whispered Murphy. Raven elbowed her in the ribs and suppressed a smile as they made their way to the pile of padding and found their sizes, pulling on the various pieces. 1, no striking the face. 2, you stop as soon as your opponent says stop. And most of all, he stopped and took a moment to scan the crowd. One dark eyebrow arched as he spotted the cluster of boys, including Henry, already jostling each other. He lowered his chin and glared at them till they froze where they were, staring at him. Absolutely no spells of any kind. Break that rule and you will end up in detention or worse. Raven found a suitable bow staff, her helmet in her other hand, and went to stand with the others, waiting to hear her name called. Jenny Connors and Ann Luntz, take the left quadrant. Jenny made her way out of the middle of the crowd and followed behind Ann. At least I can get this over with, she muttered as she passed Raven. Raven patted her on the back and whispered, you can do it. Bella Chase and Raven Albee, you take the center quadrant. Raven felt her heart start to pound in her chest and looked over at Bella, smiling a little too hard. You're every bit as good as she is, and then a little bit more, said Murphy, keeping an eye on her opponent, who was glaring at her from the other side of Bella. Go get her. Raven marched out to the center of the arena, underneath the wide opening, the sunlight shining on her red hair, and put on her helmet. She turned to face Bella, the bow staff held across her chest. You've got this. Picture her as an elf with a goat. Raven charged at Bella, twirling the stick, and swung hard, tapping her on the shoulder. But Bella had dodged at the last moment, and the hit wasn't as hard as Raven had hoped, for as Bella rolled forward, out of range, and spun around, coming at her with her staff. Raven blocked the blow, the poles knocking together, and she shoved, grunting as she pushed Bella off balance. She swung the pole quickly behind her back to get the right angle and brought it around, catching her at the waist. She saw the look of pain and surprise on Bella's face, despite the padding, and let a small smile escape. Bella narrowed her eyes and came at her eyes flashing with anger and the pole spinning in front of her. She flipped forward, still spinning the pole, and landed on her feet, bringing the pole down on Raven's helmet before Raven could block it. Not at the face, yelled the professor from the other side of the arena where he was breaking apart two large first-year boys. Raven blinked her eyes hard a couple of times and bit her lip, regaining her focus. Okay, so it's like that. Come on, elf girl. I can play rough too. She was breathing harder and her heart rate had picked up, and even as her head throbbed, she took small swings at Bella, backing her up and knocking against the bow staff, changing the rhythm to throw her off. Bella smiled as if she had figured it out and leaned in to swing, leaving her side open, and Raven saw her chance. She let the pole slide through her hand, stepping forward, letting her weight carry her, and swung, bashing Bella in the ribs again, and this time knocking the wind out of her. Bella dove headfirst into the silt and rolled onto her back, her face dotted with dirt. She was growling and baring her teeth, holding her pole across her chest, even as she gulped for air. 1, 2, 3. Raven counted off the necessary seconds for a match to be over if an opponent is down. She approached Bella to hold the stick at her throat and end the match just as Bella surprised her and leapt to her feet, still gasping. Bella, we can stop now. You were down for the count. Not a chance, Albie. I'm not letting you win. You didn't let me do anything, and I already won. Rules say 3 seconds. Fuck the rules, growled Bella, and she began swinging her pole again. Enough, shouted the professor, making his way across the arena, dodging the swinging bow staffs of other teams still competing. It took a moment for everyone to realize there was a problem in the center of the arena. Calm down, Bella. It's just a class. Raven took a step back and too late realized someone had dropped a helmet too close behind her. She tripped and fell backward just as Bella came at her, swinging for her head again. Raven rolled out of the way and got to her knees, her heart pounding, and held up her stick in time to block the blow, but too late to get her fingers completely out of the way. She felt the sharp thwack sting and winced, getting to her feet, her staff moving right and left like a dangerous seesaw. She countered each of Bella's moves, not giving an inch, and pushed her back till their faces were inches from each other. Enough, Bella, she said between clenched teeth. Not till I win. Raven could feel Bella's hot breath on her face, and she sucked in air, shoving as hard as she could. The strength she had been gaining from learning to ride Leander paid off, and she managed to get Bella back on the ground, defenseless. She raised the pole, about to leap forward and press the tip against Bella's throat, when Bella whispered something too low for anyone else to hear. Raven's pole heated up in her hands, turning to ash inch by inch till she had to let go. Magic, yelled Raven, her hands free of any weapon. Bella got to her feet, ignoring the professor, who grabbed Jenny's bow staff out of her hands and was running across the arena toward the two girls. Bella started to rush at Raven, who contemplated using a spell, but instead backed up till she was close enough to another team and reached out for another bow staff. Fair fight, she sneered at Bella. A loud screech could be heard in the distance, getting closer, but only a few of the students noticed. Everyone else had stopped what they were doing and were watching the two girls battle it out in the center of the arena. Bella swore under her breath and muttered something else, and Raven realized her right foot was stuck in place in the fine silt. She looked at Bella, her eyes wide, and shifted her weight the best she could, prepared to defend herself with a bow staff and one foot pinned to the floor. The screeching grew louder till some of the students had to cover their ears, and many of them were looking around for the source. "Look!" yelled a small girl with curly brown hair. "It's a—" But her voice was drowned out by another long screech, and she clamped her hands on her ears, scrambling down the bleachers for the ground below. Bella raised her bow staff to swing it at Raven's head, just as a shadow fell over them both, and a stream of fire lit the ground between them in a straight line. Raven felt the air moving around her and looked up to see Leander directly overhead, his red wings beating the air and a torn leather leader dangling from his back leg. He beat the air with his wings as he came down slowly, still putting a line of flames between Raven and Bella. Bella let out a scream and dropped her bow staff, breaking the spell as she ran for the bleachers. Everyone was trying to push toward the locked exits, except the professor and Raven, who dropped her staff and held out her hands for her dragon. Leander landed next to her as the professor flicked his wrist, unlocking the doors, and the students flooded out. Nina Quint ran in the direction of the main hall, yelling for help, with several others closely trailing behind her. "Leander, what are you doing here? How did you break free?" Raven tossed off her helmet and wrapped her arms around the dragon's neck as he stood between her and everyone else. "I could feel your distress. I knew you were in trouble, and I found a way." Henry lingered by the door with Murphy right next to him. "Is that your dragon?" he shouted, his mouth hanging open. Maxwell peered out of his satchel, his tongue flicking. "Whoa, you are a legend." "I told you," said Murphy. Leander folded in his wings, still standing at alert, his ears pressed back and his tail raised in the air, the sharp point aimed toward the professor. "It's all right. I'm okay. I am now," said Raven, laying her head down on the shimmering scales. "You knew I was in trouble," she whispered, her eyes shining. She took a step back till she could look in the dragon's eyes. "How did you break out?" "The pen is in pieces." "I didn't even know that was possible." William seemed a little surprised too. "And the spell?" "My will was stronger." There was a scuffle at the door, and Headmaster Flynn came running in with several other professors right behind him. Several of them had bows and arrows, and Professor Ridley was waving a sword. Raven ran in front of Leander with her arms wide. "Stop! Stop! He won't hurt you." "Get out of the way, Raven Albee. A dragon that can get loose is a threat to all of us. He has to be clipped." Professor Fellows went to grab Raven's arm, but a sudden curl of flames burning the edges of his sleeve made him draw back. "If you don't threaten me, he won't threaten you." Raven gave the professor the same cold glare she had seen him use earlier. "This is my dragon, my familiar, and I will protect him, just like he protected me. No one touches him." Bella Chase wandered back into the arena, lingering near the door, and watched, her eyes wide, as Raven stood taller, facing off against the Academy's professors and even the headmaster. "I will ride him out of here," Raven declared. Several of the professors immediately started protesting. "But there's no saddle. You can't do it. You could be harmed. We can't let you do that." Raven stood firm in front of Leander. "With all due respect, I'm not asking. No one is harming this dragon." Still, the protests kept coming, with several trying to step forward, only to earn a low growl from the dragon and a scowl from Raven. The headmaster had been silent the entire time, watching Raven and the dragon. Finally, he stepped forward with his hands open in front of him. "Silence!" he barked at the others, startling everyone. He looked at Raven, a spark of wonder in his eyes. "I've waited a very long time to see this again." The edges of his mouth were forming the start of a smile. "I began to think it was never going to happen. Dragons have become beasts of burden, tools." "I am no one's tool," growled Leander, smoke billowing out of his mouth. Bella gasped but didn't move from where she was standing. "No, I would dare say you are not," said the headmaster. "You are not even a soldier's dragon." He took a longer look at Raven, standing calmly just underneath the dragon's head, her jaw set and her arms still out. "You look just like your mother standing there, but with a twist. You know how to ride a dragon." Headmaster Flynn smiled at her and winked. He turned around to face the others. "All right then, it appears the test is here. We will give Miss Albee the chance to show us what her familiar can do, and if she has control." "You can't be serious," sputtered Professor Gilliam. "Have you ever known me to kid?" sighed the headmaster. "Take a seat, everyone. You too, Miss Chase. You should find this very informative. You come from a similar line." Bella hugged the wall and found her way to the bleachers, sitting down. "And we will talk about what you did in class later," said the headmaster, giving her a hard look. Bella swallowed hard and slid back on the bleachers, staring up at Leander. All right, Miss Albee, the floor is yours. Take the dragon through his paces and show us you have him under control. The headmaster took a seat, a tight smile on his face, his eyes narrowed. The others reluctantly sat as Raven turned around and faced Leander. We can do this if you want, or I can fly you home. Hell, I can fly you to wherever you want to go, she whispered. The dragon nudged her with his head, pushing her back. Let's show them all. Climb on my back. But there's no saddle. Even I wasn't sure I could pull that off. I'm sure. Do you trust me? Raven paused and stared into his eyes. Completely, she said, and stepped onto his leg, climbing up his back. She took a seat right behind his ears, her legs hanging down around his neck. Some of the professors gasped as Leander opened his wings and gently took off. You can do it, Raven! Henry punched the air, standing up on the bleachers. Murphy stood next to him, her hands pressed against her mouth. Circle to the left, commanded Raven, loud enough for everyone to hear. She adjusted her weight on his back as he banged to the left, the tip of his wing gliding over the heads of the spectators. Everyone's head rocked back to look up as the sun filtering through the red skin of the wing. Their hair ruffling from the wind as the wing tilted and bent to change direction. Headmaster Flynn went and picked up a bow staff and held it up in the air. Have him perch on the stick without pressing it down. Raven leaned forward and balanced her weight. A light. Leander folded his wings just enough, pushing the air up and down till he came to balance on the top of the stick, holding himself there with Raven on his back. Circle right, commanded Raven, and the wings spread out, lifting them both as the dragon turned right. Now, yelled the headmaster. Raven knew what he was asking and nodded, sitting up straight so it was obvious she wasn't whispering anything to Leander. She made herself take slow, even breaths as the dragon dropped his shoulders, glancing back at her. He came around to the right, blowing a stream of fire in a perfect circle in the middle of the arena around the headmaster. Leander then banked sharply as Raven held onto his ears, digging her feet in, and Leander made a figure eight, flying low to grab the pole from the headmaster with his claws. Raven let out a relieved breath of air, but still said nothing. They rose higher into the air until they were above the arena. The professors gasped and pointed, standing on their feet. I knew this was a bad idea. Somebody get the knives! Headmaster Flynn trotted out the main doors, a satisfied grin on his face, and kept running till he got to the courtyard in the front. He leaned back, sheltering his eyes with his hand, and watched as the dragon burst through the clouds and made slow, lazy circles, alighting next to him. Raven was laughing, her red hair falling around her face. He did it! He did it! Woohoo! She punched the air, standing up on the dragon. Leander roared with delight, holding steady with the girl on his back. Come down here. The headmaster waved, delighted, as the others caught up to him. Bella Chase stayed on the outside of the crowd, still watching in amazement. Raven climbed down, jumping off the top of his leg, and landed neatly on the ground. He did it! I knew he could do it! Leander leaned down and nudged her with his head. We did it. His voice rumbled low, vibrating inside Raven's chest. Headmaster Flynn smiled broadly. Yes, Raven, the dragon is right. You both did it, and exactly as instructed. He sensed what you wanted without you having to say a word. You, Raven Albee, have demonstrated that you have a dragon as your familiar. The headmaster looked up at Leander and smiled again. Welcome to Fowler Academy, Leander. Not so fast. Bella pushed her way to the front of the crowd. That dragon hasn't passed his tests. I'm right, aren't I? If he can't do that, he has to have his wings clipped and no familiar. I told you Bella was spelled with an H. Henry shot her an angry look. The smile slid off Raven's face and she burned with anger. Not a problem. There was an icy edge to her voice. Leander will pass the tests and be free at last. The headmaster hugged Raven and stood back. Take the dragon back to the Moss Ranch for now. When he passes, and I know he will, he said, nodding, bring him back here and we can find a pen for him to live here. You've done well, WarMage in training, he said with a wink. Follow me. I have something you can borrow, but I'll want it back. The headmaster led Raven and Leander toward the barns. Wait here. He disappeared inside for a moment and came out carrying a black leather dragon saddle with the symbol of the dragon wizards burned on each side. The saddle was scarred in places and looked battle-weary, but still usable. May I? He looked up at Leander and waited for a nod before slinging it over his back and reaching under for the strap securing the saddle. Raven could barely speak. That's a dragon wizard saddle. She looked at the headmaster. That's your saddle. She felt her breath catch. That's from the Great War, she said in awe. Yes, it is, and I'm entrusting it to you. Bring it back in the same sorry shape it's in now. I've grown rather fond of it. Congratulations, Raven Albie, the first of many successes, I'm sure. Are you ready? Leander sat down lower, waiting for Raven. Raven clapped her hands together, smiling, and put a foot in stirrup, hopping up onto the dragon, settling into the saddle. Thank you, Headmaster Flynn. I'll bring it back as soon as I can. Thank you for everything. You earned it, Miss Albie. Where is Bella Chase? Come along, young lady. You and I have a few things to discuss, like what you will be doing during your detention. Leander spread his wings and began flapping them, lifting into the air. Raven stood up in the stirrups, cheering, her hand reaching for the clouds. That is chapter 30. We're almost to the end of the book, so we might even, at least by Monday, I think we'll finally be at Daniel Codex. I hope you all are enjoying this, and I hope you all are having a great day. Wednesday, hump day. And I will see you back here tomorrow for 31 and 32, which might be the end of the book. And I'll see, hopefully, all of you on Friday. I'll be actually able to see you at the Zoom lunch on Friday. 5 lucky fans will win a pizza delivered to their door. And the rest of us will bring our lunch and we'll all gather together. Sarah Nofke is the author, guest author this week. And it should be a lot of fun. And I love you all, and I will talk to you later.